So that's kind of how I had these happiness workshops that have evolved. But it's still in the context, actually, of having a good career, being a good leader, and having high performance teams. And then so I started doing a lot of reading and research on that, and I realized that happiness is a skill you can develop.
What if you had the opportunity to have coffee with your 18-year-old self? What advice would you offer? And would you actually take the advice on offer? I'm absolutely fascinated by that question. I interview people from all walks of life, from Heineken Cup winners, New York Times bestselling authors, you name them, I've interviewed them. Be inspired, learn and grow from the experience of others. Welcome to the What I Know Now podcast with Mark Kelly. Today's guest is Jim McCarthy. Jim is a Silicon Valley expert on peak performance, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Could you give me a bit of an overview about your journey to now, please?
Sure. So I'm from the United States. I grew up in Nebraska, studied political science in Iowa. Then I had a chance to study in Vienna for a junior year abroad. Had a chance to work to study in Tübingen in southern Germany for a year. Then I was an English teacher in Frankfurt for a couple of years, was a business journalist in Madrid for a couple of years, moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in 1991, and worked for a few years in sales. And then I was lucky enough to get into Stanford for business school and graduated from there in 1996. And then was lucky enough to get hired at Yahoo in 1997 as employee number 258, which was a great experience to be part of the dot-com boom and the whole experience of riding Yahoo up and then riding it down in part as the bubble burst. And then I worked at other internet companies over the years, including Nexteg, where I was in London opening the Nexteg UK offices. And so my whole career really for the last 20 years has been in Silicon Valley. And about 5 years ago, I left the startup that I was at to do leadership consulting because people, Jim, you're a great coach, you're a great mentor, you're great at developing peak performance teams. So why don't you focus on that? I've really been lucky to have a very broad experience, both in terms of roles, in terms of geography, and in terms of size of company. I mean, when I started Yahoo, there's less than 300 people worldwide. When I left 4 years later, there was 3,000 people.
Wow, such a growth, 10x company, eh?
Yeah, so to be able to experience that hyper growth and sort of ride the waves of constant change and disruption, both your company getting disrupted and then your company disrupting other industries was really fascinating, and I learned a lot along the way, more than we can possibly share in this call. But I'll do the best I can.
So, what did you start to notice around teams that were effective and teams that probably didn't get the performance that they required?
I think that the most effective teams have a sense of vision of where they're trying to go, a sense of purpose, which is exciting to the individual members on the team, which gets someone inspired to work hard, to work creatively, to work in the flow, to go above and beyond the minimum of what's expected of them, for them to understand how that fits with their role in the company, to also see how it fits in their development in their career as individuals. That's important. I think part of that is managers who are able to let their people let me rephrase it this way. When I was working in Madrid as a business journalist, there was a consultant from the UK who came in, and I knew nothing about business at the time, but I was writing an article for Financial Times, and he said, there's three reasons why people are successful on a team. It's because they want to do a good job, they are enabled or empowered to do a good job, and they know how to do a good job. So there's motivation, there's empowerment, and then there's skills and training and expertise and know-how. And that's sort of the framework of the workshops and keynotes that I deliver related to peak performance teams. And each one of those has many, many subpoints. So I think high-powered teams are highly motivated. They understand what they're doing, why they're doing it. They are highly empowered. So the manager or the leader might say, okay, this is the goals we want to accomplish. We want to be really clear about what we're working on, what we're not working on, and why. But I leave it up to you, your intelligence, your creativity to figure out how to get there. Now, I've got some ideas, but you might have other ideas which are way better that I can't possibly have thought of. And hiring people smarter than you is a great is a great way in general of leading high-performance teams.
Brilliant.
And then the part about know-how and skills is where the manager does everything that he or she can to set that team up for success.
Brilliant. What I love about that is there's 3 points, and they're probably all just as important to each other, right? Because you've got the motivation, but you've also got the manager's influence that can make a big play, and then also the development of those skills. Because I've also found the most talented teams, or the most talented teams I've helped to develop and grow, they're not always the best people in the world. There's a lot better people who are more qualified, but they do come together because they have that motivation to go that extra mile as well, because their manager nurtures that and the environment around that, which is really, really good. Have you been in many situations where you've had to go into teams and turn them around, and maybe some success stories from doing that?
Sure. I mean, I've been in all sorts of environments where things were tough. Where, I mean, part of it was I was at one company where the culture was very, very tough, very intense, and it was not fun to work there. But I got much better as a manager, and I learned a lot about clear, direct, candid, open communication. And one of the criticisms of sometimes people in the U.S. Is that they don't want to hurt your feelings. They'll say, "Oh yeah, that's cool, that's great, that's nice," but they don't really believe that. And part of the pleasure of working in places like Germany or the UK, I've never worked formally in Ireland, but I think
it's not that direct in Ireland. Killing them with kindness is used a lot as well. So people will prefer to avoid that kind of conversation and maybe talk behind people's back rather than actually give that open, honest feedback so they can move on. So yeah. But
the best companies, I think, they're able to be courteous, respectful, kind, open-minded, non-hierarchical, very much a meritocracy. These are all core parts of what makes Silicon Valley special. Maybe not totally unique, but these are definitely components of the Silicon Valley culture that really works. But if you can have a process where communication is clear, direct, and frequent, then there's no surprises. People aren't scheming behind each other's backs. If I say, "Mark, this is the feedback I want to give for you for how you're doing. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give you an 8. And you say, "Oh, Jim, wait, I thought I was doing a 10. I say, "Well, no, actually, no. Let's get on the same page about expectations. You could have done better here. Here's something you didn't know about that I need to tell you about. And then here's something I need to do to help you out. And then you can give me feedback as well." It's like, "Well, that's good, Jim. But by the way, as a manager on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give you a 7. I say, "Whoa, 7, Mark, I thought I'm a great manager." And you might say, "Well, Jim, you promised me you were going to do this, and you didn't. And then I don't think you gave me the support I needed to in this situation. And here's something I really need help from you, and you haven't helped me yet." So you see, this kind of clear, direct, frequent communication, it might be a little painful at the moment, but if we're all adults and we're all grown-ups and we're all concerned about really growing as people and in our careers, then we're going to have the emotional intelligence to grow with that.
So feedback is really important. In the moment, feedback is very, very good because it helps people to see what they're doing well. You reaffirm what they're doing well. And if they're not doing well at certain elements, you give them the feedback or constructive feedback as well to really reinforce a message.
We all want to be liked. Some people very much need approval from others. Other people, they're okay whether they're popular or not, but they have a lot of confidence in who they are. But wherever you are in that spectrum, most people want to be liked, they want to be approved, and having feedback can be the cause of some kind of friction. So that's where there's the fear. But the problem is if you don't give people the feedback that you want, then resentment builds up, animosity develops, misunderstandings can happen with the best of people. With the best of intentions, there can be confusion, there can be misinterpretations. And so that kind of clear, frequent communication, and I'm a big advocate of weekly one-on-one meetings. And Andy Grove, who has a fascinating life story, and he used to be the CEO of Intel, for as busy
of the Paranoid Survive, got on my desk.
Yeah, phenomenal book. And also High Output Management is another phenomenal book from him. And no matter how busy he was, he would have weekly one-on-one meetings with all of his direct reports. And the way I call that is that's how you get leverage. you can be really busy as a manager, as a leader, but that 1 hour that you spend with your direct report every week will help them be productive and focused and motivated the other 39 hours a week or 49 hours a week or 59 hours a week that they're working, right? That's leverage. That's 1 hour of really quality time with the direct report to say, oh, what are you working on? Wait, no, don't work on that. You need to be focusing on this. And here's how you can be successful. And if you run into any roadblocks, come to me and I will try to help solve things for you. So that's part of leading high performance teams. There's a lot here, but that's a start.
That's really, really good. And why in this day and age, we talk about happiness and fostering that, developing that. For a lot of people, they can say, oh, I'm just grouchy, that's just the way it is, I can't change things. Tell me about developing that, because I'm a firm believer that I've read Sean Akers' book, his TED Talk. I keep a positive journal myself. I'm really up to 4,000 comments. I'm really, really big into daily rituals. So tell me a little bit about that.
So thank you for asking that. So part of my story is that, just over 5 years ago, I started doing leadership consulting. And right as I started doing that, I was diagnosed with cancer. And right now, it seems like my health is okay 4 years later. So that's great news.
Great news.
But getting that cancer diagnosis really forced me to think hard about my life, my purpose, my work, my legacy, my relationships, my regrets. And I started thinking, well, what regrets do I have? What do I want to change? How do I want to live? I had a very good friend who had lung cancer, and she said, Jim, it doesn't matter whether you have 2 months to live or 20 years to live. Getting a cancer diagnosis changes your life. But then she told me about how she would enjoy her son's lacrosse games and just see the blue in the sky and the green on the leaves and hear the laughter of the boys running on the field. And she talked about how beautiful life was just at that one moment. And what she was doing is she was practicing appreciation and gratitude. She was letting awe, A-W-E, right? She was letting awe come into her life. And she was living in the moment. She wasn't freaked out about stuff from the past and not trying to worry about something that might or might not happen tomorrow. And I'm sorry to say my friend is no longer alive, but I learned a lot from her from that experience.
Great advice.
So I started thinking hard about, okay, most people would say I'm a fairly successful Silicon Valley business person, and I've always been very ambitious and I'd say pretty hardworking. But having a cancer diagnosis, how did that change my perspective on life? And I thought maybe I had some sort of experience that I could share with people in the context of having a career, in the context of being successful, in the context of being ambitious and being married and having children and wanting to provide for the loved ones in your life. So that's kind of how I had these happiness workshops that have evolved. But it's still in the context actually of having a good career, being a good leader, and having high performance teams. And then so I started doing a lot of reading and research on that, and I realized that happiness is a skill you can develop. It's absolutely a skill you can learn. Part of it is stress reduction through meditation or a mindfulness practice. Part of it is positive thinking through affirmations. And I do whole workshops on just how to train your brain for success. And that's very learnable and very, very powerful. And now we have the neuroscience that underscores what successful people have known all along. Now we have the neuroscience that actually they can track how positive thinking can help you and actually change your brain on a biochemical level.
Is that the oxytocin?
Sorry, Mark. And then the final part is just on gratitude and how if you have a gratitude practice or you're feeling grateful, you literally on a neurological level cannot be stressed. You cannot do both at the same time. And but what I learned is that positive self-talk, positive thinking, affirmations of saying, I'm closing the sale today, I'm closing the sale, I'm closing the sale, that became very, very powerful for me. And that really was able to turbocharge my career. And this was even before I got into business school. And it's always been something very, very helpful for me. And I know some people, they're very skeptical or they scoff. And honestly, I think some people view this as this very American, very Californian thing. And they can scoff all they want, okay? But this serious, hardcore scientific research proves what optimists have known for millennia.
What advice would you offer to your 18-year-old self if you're having a water, because you're in California, or maybe a coffee, depending on what you drink, if you had a couple of minutes with him?
So I was thinking about what advice I would give to myself. One is just do what you're about to do, Jim, because I think I had a very fortunate life. I've taken a lot of risks along the way. I've done all different sorts of things, which at the time was not obvious how they were going to turn out. But I did have actually it was like a Western civilization professor at the University of Iowa when I was a freshman, and he said, hey, don't worry about, he was basically saying it's great to have a liberal arts education because the jobs you're going to have 10 and 15 and 20 years from now, they don't even exist yet. They don't even exist yet. So the liberal arts values of analytical thinking, communication skills, creative problem solving, these are the skills that you're going to carry throughout your life. But I would say a couple other things very, very practically, Mark. One is I'd say for someone who's 18 years old, I encourage them to get as many leadership opportunities as fast as they can. Now, maybe they're not managing people in their work or they're going to university, but there's volunteer groups, there's all different sorts of organizations, there's charities, there's all sorts of nonprofits where they're just waiting for someone to step in there and say, hey, I want to make a difference. I want to help out. Yes, I'm only 18 years old, but let me organize a fundraiser, or let me do something in the community, or let me get involved in politics. Those are all great opportunities to develop your leadership skills. It doesn't cost anything, and I think you can really grow as a person from doing that. Number two is I'd say if you possibly can, live in another country and learn another language. Obviously, many people speak English all over the world, but I'm very grateful for when I had the chance to study in Vienna, learn German. That's helped me in all sorts of very unpredictable ways in my life. And then once you do that, it's easy to start learning other languages. You can pick your language, whether it's Spanish, Italian, Mandarin, whatever. But I think the experience of being in another country as a foreigner, not being able to speak the language very well, having to learn a language helps you learn that other culture, helps you understand your own culture better, and I think is absolutely fundamental for international business, which is pretty much the way it's going to be for the rest of our lives. So that's advice number two.
Brilliant.
Okay, ready for number three?
Three, yeah.
Okay, live like you have cancer.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is not the fear, the pain, the suffering of cancer, not the heartbreak, and not the death that can sometimes come with that. But live as if you have cancer, as if you had cancer. What I mean by that is don't think you're going to live forever. Don't think that your life is a dress rehearsal. Don't think that you're just going to kind of, settle for mediocrity or for doing stuff you don't like or don't enjoy and doing that for 5 or 10 years. And then suddenly you're going to wake up one day and get really motivated. Life is too short for that. So if you thought, most 18-year-olds think they're going to live forever. Most 30-year-olds think they're going to live forever.
Yeah.
But if you think, let's say I'm going to live 10 more years, 15 more years max, you wouldn't mess around that much. You would first of all, you would enjoy your life a lot. You would cherish every day a lot, whether it's with family, friends, children, sunrise, you see an eclipse, whatever, you really cherish that. On the other hand, you would do work that is meaningful to you. Whatever it is, whether it's starting a company, working at a nonprofit, doing volunteer work, just being a great, caring, loving, supportive manager. That is good in its own right. But you would take it very seriously about what is your impact, what's meaningful, what is your legacy going to be. And if you do that every step of the way, then whether you live another 2 weeks or 75 years or 90 years, you will have enjoyed the journey. The journey will have been purposeful and pleasurable, and you're going to feel really good about that, and you're going to live in a very authentic way. So that's advice number 3.
Jim, very, very powerful. And just your story's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much again for your time, Jim, and I will talk to you very, very soon.
It's been an honor. I really admire what you're doing, and I think it's phenomenal, and I'm very honored to be part of your talk here. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. Bye.
All the best. Thank you.
You've been listening to the What I Know Now podcast with Mark Kelly. To subscribe to the podcast, just enter WIKN into iTunes or any Android podcast of choice, or check out the website at www.wikn.co, I'd love to get your feedback, either positive or negative, about the episode, what action you're going to take. Look forward to seeing you next week, and remember, have an absolutely super day. Bye.